being small is cool.
You do things that big business can't do.
Turnover is vanity, profit is sanity at the end of the day.
That's how I knew that that was my business.
Yeah, you can't half start a business.
Vodafone have invited us to chat about how connectivity can help sales online.
Great.
Thank you, Vodafone. My name's Lorna. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Small Business Community Enterprise Nation. So we help people start and grow. If they've got an idea, we help them turn it into a reality. And yeah, I'm just honestly so honoured that I get to have this conversation with like two beautiful businesses, chocolate and wine.
Doesn't get any better.
My name's Lucy. I'm the founder and wine lover behind Partner in Wine. I started my business when I couldn't keep my wine cold during a socially distanced drink and lockdown. So rather than doing what a normal person would do and just accepting my fate and drinking warm wine, I decided to create an insulated wine bottle that would hold a full bottle of wine, keep it cold for up to 24 hours and warm for up to 12 if that's your thing. And then off the back of that, I've created lots of different picnic accessories. And I just get to drink lots of lovely wine all the time. It's great.
I'm Giles Atwell. I run Russell & Atwell. I'm half of Russell & Atwell with my good friend Steve Russell. I started my business about 4 years ago. My grandfather began a chocolate business in 1921. My dad ran it for 30, 40 years. Got sold from the family while I was a kid in the 80s. And I thought at that time, I'd always wanted to start my own chocolate business. And so I had a sensible corporate career for about 20 odd years and then broke away about 5 years ago and started this business.
So, what do you need to start an online shop?
I would say probably if you're going to make an impact when you launch and you want to try and give yourself the best chance of, really making that impact, I would say photography is important. It's something that I personally invest a lot in, but my business is very much content-led and that's where I find my customers. So for me, I find that very important. But it's not to say that you need to go and do some huge production and pay, thousands of pounds for something that really you should be investing in your product. So I would say if you know a photographer or like you can loop a friend in that's handy with a camera, even just with your phone, I think that is one of those things that really will help you get things off the ground. You don't need to spend a lot of money on it.
No, you don't.
Please remember to wipe the camera before you take photos.
Important
Because I see so many people do it and I'm like, why have you picked up your phone when there's grease on the camera?
Yes, that's a bugbear of mine too.
But yeah, it's not, you don't need to invest huge amounts of money. I think the Shopify subscription starts from, 20, 30 pounds or something like that. And that's going to be your gateway for taking payments anyway. So super easy to do. You don't need to outsource all of these things if you don't have the money for it.
I think the UK is one of the fastest places in the world to be able to set up a business. You just need a handful of days. Just the paperwork, the registering company's house, all that sort of stuff. And then the website, the ecosystems are all there waiting for small businesses like ours.
Yeah.
And you can, Shopify, I have zero online capability or knowledge, or certainly before doing this, I did. I built our Shopify store. Now, it's not a brilliant store. It took me about a week. I spent about £1,000 with some tech help on some things that I couldn't solve. I refused to write code. I have no knowledge of code whatsoever. I'm not going to dabble in that. But I just rolled up my sleeves and went, well, how difficult can it be? So you've just got to get on with it.
So the way that I would approach the question of what you need to start an online shop is, I think it comes back to product market fit. You guys could have like the most exquisite photography, the best customer service rep, but if you don't have a product that's like meeting a need, there's kind of nothing. There's nothing there.
Or if you're not sharing the story correctly. I mean, you could sell anything if you're good enough at marketing. It's true, you could. You put a story behind something. If that story is not coming across on your website, your emails, social media, etc., anywhere else that you have a presence, I totally agree with you. I think it's...
Yeah, I agree back with you there.
And Lucy, you were solving a problem, which I think
I'm
is always a
solving
really good
problems.
place. But it's always a really good place to
Fighting.
start when you're launching something rather than
Yes.
creating something.
Well, all of my products solve a problem. So the way that I market those on social media, that comes across on the product page as well. So before I start any kind of launch campaign or, and this is relevant for anyone that's just starting a business and they're launching with one product. You don't need to launch with loads of products.
No.
Just, start with one and build it out from there. I start with how they are solving a problem, and that's how I kind of curate the story. And as we said, your website just needs to make sure that you're hitting all of those points, because otherwise it could just be another product that someone could go and buy.
Absolutely.
From any other website, any other business. And it doesn't matter what the price point is. If people want to buy from you, that's who they want to buy from. It's how you curate that and how you present that online.
And Lorna, you talked about product market fit.
Yes.
But what do you do when you are dealing with a small business and you're not sure about the fit?
Ask questions. It really amazes me how many small business owners feel nervous about asking a very basic question to their customers about their business. So, for example, I think the best businesses are ones that are really not afraid of, and there's amazing engagement tools that you can use on social media. So if you were launching a new product, you could just do a quick poll on Instagram stories. Do you prefer the pink or the blue? Do you prefer this texture or that texture? Do you prefer the champagne or the white chocolate? So I think if you're struggling to know whether you have product market fit, you just need to get out there, pick up the phone, send an email, get out on the street. And I think because we are seeing this rise in online business and we've got AI as well, I think people are a bit nervous now of just kind of getting out there, open up a pop-up shop or, flyer in the street. Like there are ways, if everyone's zigging, you can zag, and you just don't know what feedback you're going to get, which could totally change the course of your business for the better. So if it's kind of a bit of a tumbleweed situation and you're just not getting any feedback on your product market fit,
That in itself is feedback, isn't it? When you're not getting feedback. I work on and I'm sure someone who's clever understands this better than me, but I work on the assumption that 1% of the feedback is what you actually hear. And so if you have someone coming to you and saying, I wasn't happy with this, I always think there's 99 other people who are thinking this. They've just taken the trouble to feed that back. So, we always kind of embrace that and say, thank you for actually taking the trouble to say that you thought that chocolate wasn't quite right or you weren't sure the packaging was sealed properly, because I can go and have a look at that now and check it out.
And when it comes to your website, there are amazing tools that you can use that also can ask questions to complete anonymized users as well. And loads of these tools are really low cost. You just need to maybe plug in a little bit of code on your website, and then, yes, it will maybe do some split testing and get some research. And one of my favorite tools is Hotjar, where you can just watch people interacting with your website as well. Because as you said, not everyone's going to complain if there's a bit of friction or a bottleneck in your checkout journey. But if you can watch people and they're like, why does everyone keep bouncing at this particular button on this particular page? And I think what I hear from both of you, which is great, is you're clearly curious. And again, that's something that I would encourage small business owners to be.
How do you build an email list for your online business, and why is that important?
So we had 3,000 pouches of chocolate that we needed to figure out what on earth to do with, we were making, and we couldn't get out there and do anything with it. So we went on Kickstarter and we did an initial kind of, we're launching, help fund us a little bit, please, and you'll get free chocolate. And we offered these prizes and so on. And that brought us in our first sort of 500,000 people on our mailing list right from the get-go.
Fantastic.
And that was really, really helpful. So that's what we did. How about you?
That's amazing. Basically, at the start, I was like, well, people should not be getting a discount on my product. They should want to support me. So actually until last summer, so for 4 years, I didn't offer any kind of welcome discount or free shipping, anything like that. I just expected people to sign up to my mailing list. I was very sparse in what I sent out. I had no flows set up, apart from abandoned carts. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets. But we live and we learn. So I've been building it up since then with offers, also working in tandem with lots of other companies. So as I've discovered, people love to win free wine. And so I do lots of, I know, it's weird, isn't it? I do lots of giveaways with wine brands whereby we would do sort of data sharing, obviously, making sure that we're ticking all the boxes in terms of GDPR. But that's kind of how I've started to build it up, as well as like welcome offers. It's really benefited my sales and my business growth. Even in the past year, I can just see a huge spike, and I've kind of become quite data obsessed, not just with my emails, but with my meta ads, and seeing how much that contributes to my revenue. So yeah, kind of wish I'd done that earlier, but mistakes were made. We learned from them. Yeah.
And what do you see from businesses you work with, Lorna?
I love email marketing. I could talk about it all day long. And I don't think you're alone in that journey, starting the business and then actually thinking, oh gosh, you know what, I could have been building this email database from day one. So the ROI that you can get from email marketing kind of like far outweighs a lot of other sort of marketing channels. And I think I get a little bit frustrated when I see people invest so much time and energy in their social media, because if you're relying on all these other platforms, like you just don't own it. You don't own that content. It could just be evaporated tomorrow. So it's kind of like shaky grounds if you're just putting all of your eggs into that social media basket. The great thing about email marketing is you guys own that data. So it's super, super valuable to you. You have control. When you're posting on social media, and you'll know this, particularly say TikTok and Instagram, there'll only be a certain percentage of people that will see that from the thousands of people that follow you. Whereas email, I think it's a far greater number. So you've got beautiful control there. It's all your branding. You talked about automation and flows. There's loads of technology. So basically, you can be going about your day. Your emails are just ticking over in the background. So it's not just about your one-off newsletters, but the email automation is so, so important. And in terms of tips to acquire emails, you're absolutely right. Discounts, partnerships with like other similar brands.
But email is so important, I think, to online businesses. It's so tangible in terms of the link from sending something out to sales. But I also think it's a way of longhand having conversations with consumers, that in a way that social media, it's just a different channel. It's more bite-sized, it's smaller, it's quicker, it's faster. But online, I mean, I write almost all of our emails.
Nice.
Personally. We have flows that I'm across, but the emails that I write, I've just sent out one last night that was for Father's Day. And you make it personal. You, as a small business, you do things that big business can't do.
Yes.
So Steve and I, my business partner and I put little pictures of us as kids with our dads. Steve's dad's sadly no longer with us, and I just talked a little bit about our dads, and then you launch into it's Father's Day. Nobody ever knows what to get for the dads, so how about some chocolate, sort of thing. But you're able to get that tone of voice across, and you talk about data there, Lucy, but the data is phenomenal. You look at your open rates and your click-through rates and all that
engaged.
sort of stuff.
You just can't see that on social media.
You really can't, and then you can segment people. But I guess the other side of things with the email list then is the sort of feeding and weeding of it is one of those things that if you're on Klaviyo as well?
Yes.
Everyone seems to be on Klaviyo, so Klaviyo or Klaviyo, whatever it's called, and you get charged by how many names you've got on your list. And so every now and then you think, I've got this sort of dead number of people who came to us through such and such a competition.
Yeah.
Probably need to sort of just push them out, give them a last chance to have a look. But if they haven't bought in whatever the number is, 6, 12, 18 months, we need to gently let them go because I'm paying for them. So there's also a feeding and weeding element, I think.
Being small is cool, and it makes people so, as you say earlier, it makes people feel like it's so much more of a personal relationship that they share with you. So all of my automations, they come from me, and it's like, hey, so-and-so, I noticed that you haven't shopped yet. here's your special one-off code, love from Lucy. And, you know, even when people place their first order, I got an email back from a guy today who had bought a picnic blanket and a cool bag for his wife's 30th yesterday morning. And he'd replied to an email that was automated. And I mean, I feel bad saying this because obviously I didn't sit there and take the time to write it every time someone buys something, but he was like, thank you so much for your email. That's, you know, really lovely to hear from you. Actually, while I've got you here, would you mind adding a gift note to the order?
Wonderful.
So you kind of, then you get to have those conversations with people.
Absolutely.
And so I was up this morning and I thought, actually, do you know what? I will reply to that because it's not often that you get people email back saying, this is really nice.
Yeah, I think that tone is so important. When you get reviews, we get reviews that say, we did a coffee micro batch a few weeks ago with Saltmarsh coffee, really cool, matured in sacks next to a secret location, secret Saltmarsh in Norfolk. And we do a handmade batch of just a couple of hundred chocolates. And it's kind of get it if you can. You know, the reviews kind of, you boys have done it again, sort of thing. You know, the connection, and it is us. You know, it's Steve who's actually making these chocolates all by hand, so it genuinely is us. But that connection to people, you know, from my corporate time, I worked at Cadbury and Godiva and Milka and all sorts of, you know, big chocolate brands. Wow. There's no, the person behind it is just so far behind it. We're now front and center in it, which I have. As a human being, I have mixed emotions about. I don't really like being the center of attention, but it's what you can do that's different for a small business.
Absolutely. I think it's also, it's quite cyclical with your social media as well. If something's really resonating on social media, lead with that in your next newsletter. And I think a lot of small business owners are wary of the time that goes into email marketing, but use it in a really sort of like intelligent way. And clearly you guys have built like a great relationship with your customers. You're asking questions. And I think it's nice when the founder thinks, actually, I am going to step into the shoes of the customer service rep today and have a conversation. That's so valuable.
How do you handle seasonal fluctuations in sales?
I've got a very, very seasonal business. So obviously picnic season is my top season. So from March to probably the end of September, and then October is a fairly quiet month, and then leading up to Christmas, again, gifting, that's a huge season for me. But January and February are often very quiet, and when I need to invest in a lot of stock to start selling from March, it can sometimes feel quite tough.
Cash flow is a white knuckle ride off season when you're building for season.
Yeah. And do you know what? I don't think enough people actually talk about that because it's one of those things, again, people are embarrassed to be like, oh, I didn't have any cash flow to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And everyone struggles with it. So why is that something that people are not talking more about? There's so many different ways to either, you know, A, get that investment if you need it, Kickstarter, you know, there's various other things online that you can have a look at. There's grants, etc. if you really do need that extra push to sort of grow. But I personally, it's still a learning journey for me, to be honest with you. But I think I'm finally getting my head around it, and I'm 5 years in. So if anyone's, you know, a couple of years in, and they're like, looking at everyone else, comparing themselves and being like, how are they doing it? We're all in the same boat.
We're winging it. I think you actively help each other. There's a real difference when you're in a small business that you realize that there's plenty of space for everybody.
For sure.
And therefore you will talk to people who you would think previously would have been your competition. It doesn't matter. There's space for everybody. You can help each other. So if you see someone doing something, I've done it a number of times. I see someone doing something great, I'll write them a note through LinkedIn. I thought that was fantastic. You know, would you have time for a chat? And people do it with me. And there's a lovely element of sharing information and insight with people, which makes such a difference.
I was going to say, just going back to the question about seasonality, I have got to a point now where I am thinking about, okay, if I've got 6 months of solid sales in the UK, where can I go that's warm to sell my products?
Right.
So come next January, February time, I'm actually taking a 2-month trip to various different places, one of which I have like earmarked as a potential place to have a hub and start selling my products out there. So because I've got my business to a point where I can do that. And, I couldn't for a long time because I didn't have enough products. My average order value wasn't high enough. So I'm glad I've got to a point now where I'm like, okay, do you know what? I actually know what I need to do versus, again, it is winging it, but I've been winging it for 5 years and I'm like, light bulb moment. I now have the answer to that question, but I wouldn't have had the answer to that question no matter how hard I tried until this point. So it is a little bit about experience. It's about asking people, seeing if those ideas are viable, and if they're potentially not, maybe park it and it's a job for later on down the line. But then obviously asking people for advice on how they've dealt with it if they have a seasonal business, and how they sort of start to do that earlier on. I've got a friend who runs a very successful jewelry company, and she's just opened a warehouse in the US. But before that, she was, she had a separate US site just to sort of test the waters. And it's interesting to see how that worked rather than jumping straight in and being like, okay, I need to set up a US company. I need to do this, that, and the other, which costs a huge amount of money to test the waters and see if that works, using your online store where you can do various different things like change the pricing for different regions just so that you can sink in your delivery costs a little bit more, and using, again, those tools and technologies to your advantage.
Yeah.
Online is brilliant for doing a little bit of testing and learning.
Yes.
Because you can be in control of your site. If you're in regular retail, you can't make those tweaks and changes. If you're online,
slower.
you can change something in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. What I love about what you just said as well is that you have a goal. I think a lot of small business owners, when they're kind of going through a really tricky patch with their sales, is they will kind of lose that momentum. And that goal that you have in terms of you want to get to a place where you can go traveling for a couple of years and do whatever you set out to do, which sounds very exciting, by the way, I think it's really important to have this sort of North Star metric. And it might not be revenue. It might be freedom. And it might be to take a month out to spend with the kids or whatever it might be. And it's so important to come back to that because as we've been, talking about, it can be choppy waters and it can be really,
really difficult.
It can be really, really difficult. And so it's so good to come back to your why.
How do you price your products competitively?
Lorna, you look like you've got an opinion on this.
Lots of opinions. I would say, so that question's really interesting. Pricing your products competitively. Firstly, I would say it is important to do your competitor research, but don't just do that. Because if you're positioning your brand to be maybe slightly more premium, that's something to take into consideration. I also think what startups forget about when pricing their product is their time. I, through my work, meet a lot of small business owners that, use their hands to make beautiful products. Now, the cost of that product to make in terms of the materials could be really, really minimal. Let's say, I don't know, I'm making a scarf. But the time it's taken, maybe it's 10 hours, 20 hours, is so important to embed into your price point. So I think that's really important, is to think about the cost of the product, absolutely look at your competitors and what they're charging. And it's okay to not, I think, again, don't worry if your price point is above your competitors. Please don't race to the bottom because it's okay. Your branding can give yourself a premium. And then obviously as well, think about your profit margin as well, which is that lovely bit of buffer, which will enable you to grow year on year. But there's lots of ways that you can look at it. But I think, the fundamentals are look at your costs, make sure that your time's included in that. Absolutely do your research, ask the questions. We've talked about that a lot. What would your audience be willing to pay for it? And don't forget to add your profit margin on that as well.
Yeah, and I guess there's a decision in there as well as to whether you price it based on what you need to make today or where you want to get to tomorrow. Because you might well be in a position of thinking, you know what, over time, if I want to get bigger and bigger appeal, I might need to bring the price down a bit closer to mainstream. You don't have to be in that space. And you could decide to price earlier there, or more your destination pricing, or you price and go, no, I want to make money from day one. And it's just a choice. I don't think there is a single answer to that. And it'll depend on your industry and your brand and your business and, frankly, your financial runway that you've got.
The moment you post online and your product's out there, you will, and it doesn't matter whether your product's expensive or cheap, it doesn't matter what price it is, you are always going to get pushback from someone at some point about the price of that product. And they are going to tell you why they don't think your product is worth it. But they are not your customer. So you're pricing your product for your ideal customer, not first and foremost, but that's just one of the points. I price my products on margins. I have a huge margin spreadsheet that allows me to see whether I'm making profit on these items or not. And that's where I start. If I'm, I'll put in my product costs and then I'll think about roughly what I'm thinking pricing it at. Then I will add on 10% for my welcome offer discount, just to make sure that that is profitable. If you are going to offer those kind of discounts to get people in, you need to factor that into your cost. And that's something a lot of people don't do. I think a lot of other small business owners would be afraid to increase their prices once they have set that price. No one pushed back on it. I'm still making sales. I'm actually up 150% on sales this year versus last year. So it is one of those things that I think the confidence comes from within, and you have to just have that attitude of, I need to price it like this, one, to make it work, two, because it's in line with my brand. And it's just one of those things that, eventually people will get on board with it if you do everything else right, the storytelling, etc. I don't like to exclude people based on price, but I think it's important to work towards having different price points so that people who are invested feel like they can own a piece of your brand.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah, I love that sort of like customer life cycle that you've clearly adopted there.
Yeah.
And I love the sound of your spreadsheet. I'm such an Excel geek. And it is so important to know your numbers, because turnover is vanity, profit is sanity at the end of the day.
But to your point on time, that I thought was also really interesting around understanding, we've all got magic spreadsheets with like lots of information on them and so on. And
love a spreadsheet.
The time to do stuff, when you're looking at your P&L, understanding, we hand package up our chocolates into things and we deal with that ourselves because we've made the call not to outsource that side of things, because we want our chocolates to look beautiful as they come through. So we have tissue paper and a sticker and that level of detail. But we changed our packaging box to a box that was probably 20% quicker to assemble. And it's a really simple thing, but when something like that little touches every order that goes out the door, it makes a real difference. Absolutely. And our packers are so much happier. And we were hand dating at the start, all of our pouches going out, hand dating, hand batching. The time it took. Now we've got what we call P2D2, our automatic dating machine, which is fantastic. These things, when you save a little something, and it's a bit like your 5 wins every week. If you save a tiny little something, but 100 times in a day, it's brilliant. It's really brilliant for you.
Processes.
Yes.
Although I did quite like the story about you handwriting stuff on, but that's because I'm just a huge advocate for small businesses. So anything a little bit rustic, I'm like, amazing.
The nostalgia.
The handwriting was lovely. It still looks quite nice. It's not quite as nice as before.
I was just going to say, that's like when I first started Partner in Wine, I was sending all the boxes from home. And I was like, this is great. It makes amazing content. Just before I launched, I was like, right, how am I going to do the addresses on the boxes? And I was like, I am not handwriting those on. And I could have just got one order on launch day, And, I still was like, no, I'm going to save some time. This is a good thing that I'm going to do. So I worked out how to, connect. I bought a printer to connect the thing with the website and print them all out. And even things like that just saves such a huge amount of time, effort,
Anything you can automate along the way. There are things that are brilliant to automate that don't touch the customer, they don't care about. And then there are things where the human touch is so important. In peak season, Steve and I will actually do some of the packing, we'll help out the team. on our front of our boxes are two characters that are on our graphic design. And if I see someone I know, which I'll occasionally do, I'll write a little speech bubble and write a little note to them, a personal note. And that comes through the post, and they love it, and they understand that you're a proper human who's actually touched this and packaged it up. There are other things, as you say, like address printing, when the best thing to do is to be clear. It needs to get through to the destination. So, you might as well save yourself that time.
I also think that just looked a bit more professional. I'm all for being like I and my and saying I'm doing it, but I was like, I am doing it and I am not handwriting those on.
But we hand wrote the personal messages for the first Christmas that we had, because we didn't have a system that enables us to do that. And my daughter came in to help because I have horrendous handwriting. And she said to me, Dad, there's some quite rude messages getting written on these things. And she was, I don't know what she was, 14 at the time or something like that. I said, well, just write them, right?
Oh, gosh. It's what the customer
One of them was from
wants.
my own brother.
Customer is always right.
Brilliant.
Exactly. Valentine's Day is also interesting. I can tell you, in chocolate, there's a lot of stuff that gets written, which we obviously will not be exposing people on. But there's some very funny messages that go out for Valentine's, which is kind of cute.
I think my most controversial opinion about selling online is to launch ugly. Launch ugly, get it out there, don't wait for everything to be polished, otherwise you'll just never launch.
I very much agree with that. I think that optimizing it and getting better, possibly my more controversial perspective is that I think we spend a huge amount of time, or you risk spending a huge amount of time when you're building a website, looking at beautiful, incredible optics on the website. Whereas what's actually more important is that the thing works. And, I don't know about you, I've been in a number of websites where they're incredibly complex. You can tell they've spent a huge amount of time and effort on really impressive graphics and everything's swooshing and moving around. And as a consumer, you're initially enamored. And then you just get a bit annoyed. It's taking a while to load. You're not really sure how it works, and it's slowing you down, and you just get annoyed. And I think that aesthetic, you're better off clunky visually, but working smoothly than I would say, the opposite way around. Speed
is actually really important when it comes to websites, and I think is often overlooked. When we're buying from an e-commerce store, you might be doing the school pickup, or you might be watching Netflix at the same time. So reducing all of that friction, speeding up the site so it's, as you say, smooth, simple. It's really, really important.
We call it 3 clicks to purchase. So from the moment someone lands on your website, 1, 2, pay. My most controversial opinion about selling online, and this is going to sound really harsh, but not everyone can do it. And what I mean by that is everyone could do it. You've got the tools, you've got the means. A lot of people think it's what they want to do. You can set up a side hustle while you're running, while you're employed by someone. Whether you have the time, the dedication, and the confidence, which is the most important part of that, if you don't believe in your products, you're never going to see that through. You're going to waste money, you're going to waste time, and depending on what your goal is at the end of the day, that may not become your full-time thing. So I think when you start a business and you think about setting up something to sell online, you need to ask yourself, do I really truly believe in this product? Do I believe in this business? And do I think this is a good idea that's going to work? And what I said earlier about when I started Partner in Wine, and I knew from the moment I thought of the product it was going to work, that's how I knew that was my business. Yeah, you can't half-start a business. I see in a lot of small business owners, confidence is the thing that holds them back. And it's really sad, it is, but it's something that if you really want to make it work, you have to kind of get over that. You have to put your face out there. You have to start talking about your business. You have to tell everyone and anyone that will listen about what you do.
Shameless plug, but this is why I think communities like Enterprise Nation is so important. If you do have a brilliant idea, but you lack the confidence, lack the network, don't know the tools to adopt, this is where organisations like ours, and there's loads of communities, like really local ones, national ones online, that are now being formed on social media as well. Get yourself out there, surround yourself with a really positive, proactive group of people that can be your cheerleaders when you're really not quite sure about something.
Ask
And
for
how do you work with a founder to build confidence?
I think by connecting the founder with other founders is really important. So you might be sitting there and being like, oh my goodness, I just can't figure out my cash flow. But then if you sit with another founder, they might be saying, don't worry, because I'm exactly the same. So one, okay, fine, I'm not alone. And then secondly, a way that we can help, and something that I really encourage, again, entrepreneurs do, is if you don't know the answer, and a phrase our founder often says is, do what you do best and outsource the rest. And you were saying that you do this with your email marketing. If cash flow just isn't your jam, because chocolate is, and customer service and branding, it's okay to just, ask questions or just completely outsource it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think startups quite often think, I've got to do everything. It's not actually the case.
I would still do it on social media. So the way that I actually started my social media initially for Partner in Wine was through my own personal Instagram, which is my entrepreneurial profile. And I was talking about this business that I was starting. I gave nothing away. I didn't say what the business was about. I just talked about several things like setting up the website, packaging, an e-commerce product-based business being very different from my business at the time, which was marketing. I'm just selling my time. So I was learning all these new different things. The day that I announced that the business was called Partner in Wine and I linked it, still didn't talk about the product. That was 100% the right thing to do. But the way that I did it at the time was on stories and I was posting photos. Now it's very, very video led. And that's why you will rarely find me post a photo, because it's not how I storytell now. I have a huge amount of content that I have built up from the very beginning, filming myself do absolutely everything. And that's the advice I would give now. Obviously, it is different from when I started, kind of similar in ways, but video is key.
I see that a lot, Lucy. At all the events that we run, which attract lots of small business owners, there's always a proportion of founders who don't want to talk about their idea because they're worried that someone's going to run away with it. And I just want to
No.
Like, this is a platform for you to get some feedback. I could be a potential customer. I could be an angel investor. I'm not. But, you just don't know who you're speaking to. So, yeah, if you're holding your idea too tightly to yourself, I just really recommend just start talking about it.
You're very rarely creating anything that is scientifically proven to be new. We don't have any patents on what we're doing because we're making yummy chocolates. It's
Yummy
just
chocolates.
that we're wrapping our brand around it and a set of ingredients and so on, and they're quite difficult to replicate. Where do you want to start? I had a friend, an old colleague, come to visit our business. I laid on a whole sort of session for him. He was like, I want to understand how you run a business. He was a VP for a big multinational. I want to see how this works, all this kind of stuff. I was like, yeah, we'll do you a day. I'll do you an induction. I'll show you this. I'll show you that. He arrived, 9 a.m. Our laptop that we use for procurement died overnight.
Oh.
And I said, okay, all bets are off. We are going to now drive around Birmingham and either try and get the laptop fixed or buy another laptop, because I am not missing the sending out of the orders today. So I'm very sorry you had a day planned. And we literally we were driving around trying to go to certain tech establishments. One was shut and the other wasn't open, all this sort of stuff. We had to get the laptop in, we had to boot it up, I had to load all the stuff, I had to connect all the stuff. We were back and running for lunchtime. But that, as a startup, this is what happens, that every day something new smacks you in the face and you just got to deal with it.
All I was thinking there was that would make a great viral video.
But you see, I should have taken one. I
was
didn't
thinking,
at the time. Your storytelling.
I hope you filmed that. Yeah. If something like that happened to me, I'd get the phone straight out.
I've now learned that's exactly what we should be showing. And some of our most effective communication has been when we make mistakes.
Absolutely.
Not on the technical side. We've got a whole range of misfits that are basically batches that have gone wrong, and we sell them for hot chocolate and frappes. Because initially we were going to throw it away; it was going to be wasted.
Yeah.
And then we started making hot chocolates and thinking, no, hang on, there's something we can do here. So mistakes don't always have to be a bad thing.
I agree. And also, when mistakes do happen, people are so busy. They're so wrapped up with, their own lives. Quite often, people don't notice the mistakes either. Okay, hands up if you send out an email marketing campaign and there's been a typo or
Well,
a
this
dodgy
was actually
link.
going to be my embarrassing story.
It happens, right? But actually, it's the email that maybe you send afterwards with the oops, I made a mistake. That's the one that gets people's attention, right?
Yeah, so that happened to me not last year on Black Friday, 2023 Black Friday. I thought, I'm going to treat my best customers to an early access to this sale. And what I actually did was didn't segment my list. This was pre my email marketing whiz. And I sent it out to the whole list. And at the time I was like, oh, what have I done that? And then literally 1 second later, I was like, this is going to be amazing. Got straight on social media, was like, I can't believe what I've just done. And everyone was like, oh my God, I'm going to check my emails now. And I had the best Black Friday I've ever had.
Your open rate must have been phenomenal.
Skyrocketed.
It was, and also I made it into a massive story. So I kept sending out plain text emails like, I can't believe I did this. And then I kind of just booted into, auto drive. And it's so funny because a lot of people who are, I call them like OGs, who have followed my journey from the beginning, they have messaged me and they're like, you're a genius. You know exactly what you're doing. I was like, this was actually a genuine mistake, but I can see how you think my evil marketing genius is working here, because I am a bit of an evil marketing genius. And actually moving forward, I'm like, how can I integrate strategies like that where it kind of maybe, not to trick people, but kind of maybe seems like things have gone a little bit wrong, or there's something hidden somewhere, and turning those mistakes into a positive spin to get people's attention.
We have a slight running joke between Steve and I that his ability to count is somewhat limited. His ability to count when it comes to putting together recipes, I often ask him, have you got the calculator out at any point in the making of? We've got a new chocolate coming out in a few weeks' time. And I just held my breath as he reads out the ingredients to me over the phone. We've got some Cornish clotted cream in there. I mean, it costs a fortune. But that aside, his second ability to count is around his inventory management. And he manages a lot of the operations. And it's a running joke that we go from loads to none, seemingly in minutes. How are we doing on the pouch packaging for the salted caramel? Loads. And then about 20 minutes later, you're like, I've just realized. And we therefore end up putting an oops little flyer in because we have to print stickers because we can't get the pouches quick enough and it becomes a story. And what we've learned is to make a story out of the story. And I do think that, we have a slight maxim of, if in doubt, tell the truth. And the truth actually is much more engaging, I think, than things that you invent, because funny stuff happens like all the time and you can make something of it. And I think, you're more advanced than we are on telling that story, but we've learned how to tell that story.
Well, people like giving an emotional response. So when you open a delivery that you've got, you might be excited that that delivery has arrived. If that delivery arrives and it has you've ordered salted caramel and it comes in a strawberries and cream thing, and you've put a thing on there that says, well, gosh, we actually ran out of packaging. Because you'd be like, that's really funny. And also they've taken the time to, own up to that mistake. You're always going to remember that. Whereas, let's say you order from a company that you just order something on a whim through an ad, you enjoy whatever it is, or, you wear it, I don't know, whatever, you forget where that comes from. Whereas if you've had an emotional response to it, it's something you probably won't forget.
I would say the biggest unlock right now for entrepreneurs, small business owners, is leveraging AI, other sort of automation technology that's available. And I feel, and I see it a lot from speaking to small business owners, there is nervousness around it. Like, but, I run my lovely small business and we've talked a lot about storytelling and being human. But I don't think leveraging AI and automation, machine learning will take that away. It will enable you to free up your time so you can focus on creativity and innovation and product development.
We are learning at the moment. So I have no expertise whatsoever on AI, but we now have what we call Robo-Russell, who is our AI customer little bot that helps people answer questions. And Robo-Russell means that we can do customer service 24/7, 365 days a year. Robo-Russell is brilliant if you ask an easy question. Do you sell vegan chocolates? Can you ship to Sweden? Things like that. A little bit less flash on other things. So we've got a little caveat that says, Robo-Russell's our newest employee. He's just learning at the moment. Will you please be patient? And then we have the wonderful Maria on our customer services looking over Robo-Russell's shoulder, literally looking at every response, and we're training him. So I've had to learn and train on AI. I have no expertise in this. The thing about this is another system. This is with gorgeous customer service where you just put a thumbs up or a thumbs down. This was a good response. This was a bad response. If it was a bad response, then you should have used this type of response. The tone of voice was wrong. You're too verbose. It does go wrong. I mean, Robo-Russell has made up some really bad, not bad stuff, but some completely untrue stuff. Oh. So you have to go in and go, I'm really sorry. We will not be shipping your Easter egg in August. This is not how things work. But you learn. And part of being a small business is being human, even in your application of AI.
I think with technology, you have to be quite mindful about what you're good at and what you're not good at. And that's the approach I've taken. I've been running my own business for 10 years this year. And the things that I'm not good at, I've identified along the way. So, whether that's outsourcing it to someone else, but, sharing a platform where I can, oversee what's going on, like accountancy software is a great example of that. They're there for inspiration and then for you to go in and edit. And that's sort of, how I deal with things.
It's a leg up.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you can have something on your mind and actually you think, oh, God, I can't even piece together an email today. So please just help me out. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. I think a lot of people maybe start online businesses thinking it's going to make them a lot of money quite quickly, which for some people, it absolutely does. But there's this, being online, there's this kind of constant comparison of, looking at people who appear to be extremely successful. And, we've already spoken about that today, but it is hard work. It's not super easy. It can feel really difficult sometimes, but there's highs and lows. And for me, the highs definitely outweigh the lows. I mean, I'm a very positive person anyway. I don't cry very often. I know, it can affect people to that point. I have a lot of friends like that. But if you kind of are going into it thinking that it's a get-rich-quick scheme, you might be humbled really quite quickly.
When you're thinking about online sales, you have to think about it all the way from one end right the way through to the other. For us as a chocolate business, we have to think about it from bean, from Colombia on a sustainably sourced estate, through to bite from what the customer is doing and when they actually consume the product. And if you mess up any step within that, you can ruin the customer experience for them. And so it's very easy to focus on the thing that you know all about. If you know all about chocolate, it might be all about the sourcing of it. But you've got to play your way all the way through. And beyond the bite, beyond the usage of it, is the customer service after you've actually sold it as to what happens. Because if someone trips up and gets frustrated with you, and if they don't bother giving you the feedback, you're never going to know. They're just going to leave.
One takeaway that I would share with a small business owner if they're looking at starting trading online is to embrace technology. And I think there's a lot of goodwill out there for sole traders, early stage startup business owners. There are free trials out there, there are discounts, and I would just say just leverage that time as much as possible. Yeah, that would be my tip.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys.
When maybe fresh organic cream and no palm oil, would you like to try?
I was waiting.
Pass it over.
Wow.